and I'm here to ask for your support for my candidacy as City Councillor in the upcoming campaign, which I consider very crucial to our city. First, I'm going to introduce Mike Piercy. Mike's a diligent worker with a lot of personal integrity. He didn't enjoy the privileged upbringing I did, but he was able, through perseverance and ingenuity, to start an environmentally green business known as Revolt Batteries. And basically, his business takes batteries that would otherwise go into the landfill, and he fixes them so you can reuse them. I was quite impressed with that and the business track record he's put together. He's been married to his lovely wife Yvonne for 13 years, who's a speech pathologist, and we're going to get her to watch this speech afterwards to give me some tips here. Through our friendship, my respect and admiration for Mike has grown continuously. And I think as you guys get to know Mike, you'll appreciate him as much as I do. Can I ask you guys to put your hands together for Mike? While I begin here, I'm going to give you a brief personal history about myself here. I grew up in St.Albert, and I can remember on top of Heron Street when we didn't have the clock tower there, we had an abandoned building, and we used to, as kids, used to go down in there and get in all sorts of trouble. I also remember when the Canadian Tire was a frog pond. We used to go there and play for hours as well. I feel proud to say that I graduated with honors from one of the finest schools in the Edmonton area. That's Paul Kane High School. Without such fine educational instruction, I might not have been afforded the opportunity to attend the University of Alberta and to obtain my degree in commerce with a specialization in accounting and economics. To pay for my university education, I joined the Canadian Armed Forces and served my country for 6 years. As a soldier, I learned self-discipline, courage, and mental fortitude to see a job through to the end. As a member of 745 Communications Squadron, I was given top secret security clearance, which vested me with the responsibility to maintain confidential matters of national security. My military career instilled in me 3 ideas which became the foundation blocks later in my life. A pride in Canada, which is one of the most decent, respected countries in the world. An appreciation for St.Albert, which I consider one of the finest communities in Canada to call home. And duties of citizenship, for there's no right without a parallel duty, no liberty without supremacy of law, and no high destiny without earnest perseverance, and no real greatness without self-denial. When I graduated from university, I worked for the provincial government as a management accountant. However, my natural inclination was to be part of the private sector. Consequently, I bought and condominiumized an apartment building before everyone else got into that game. I subleased a Catholic priest dormitory and transformed it into a student housing complex when no one else seemed to find a use for that building. So you could see I got into the affordable housing racket long before it became vogue in this city. Through my ventures in the real estate market, I became familiar with planning regulations, city bylaws, and general management skills necessary for every entrepreneur to become successful. Later on, I started a doggy daycare center here in St.Albert when most people didn't even know what that was. And basically, for you guys that are still in that scenario, basically you look after people's dogs. As you can appreciate, when I first started this venture 8 years ago, many people told me that this was a foolish idea. For the first few months of the operation, I would get calls from people asking if I would look after their 6-month-olds, to which I'd reply, sure, but he better have 4 legs. Through foresight and hard work, we built one of the largest and most successful dog daycare centers in the Edmonton area. In fact, our local business here was so successful that the Edmonton Humane Society decided to copy exactly what we do. Needless to say, I was a bit resentful at the prospect of being a tax-paying businessman who now had to compete with a tax for charity. But in the end, I recognized that imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. As a young man, I was not particularly interested in city politics or running for city council. But today, I see many things happening in our city which should give everyone cause for alarm. Let me just go over a few of them here tonight. In the past 8 years, city property taxes have doubled. We used to be able to say that we received good value for money. No one can make the claim now that we're receiving double the service we were 8 years ago. Now, let me tell you a quick story here that illustrates my point. I like little gizmos and gadgets, and I found this really neat pen, which I purchased. This pen's really neat because it works underwater, works at minus 60 degrees, it works upside down, and it even works in outer space. When the US government was deciding they were going to space, they needed a way to write while they were in orbit, because a normal pen wouldn't work. So they created a study group, they created a focus group, they created performance test results. They hired an independent contractor and eventually developed this really cool pen. And you know what? It did work in outer space. But it cost them about $25 million to build this pen. So we know that the Russians also went to space. Any guesses what they used?
A pencil.
That's right, a pencil. So this idea about the city having a gold standard for everything has to change. Every now and then we can pick the pencil option instead of this pen. It's okay for me to go out and spend my own money on this pen. It's $20 and I earned that money. But it's a much different thing for me to take all of your money and to go out and buy these pens when a pencil will suffice. We need to restore the idea of value for money in government. The scope of our municipal government has grown far beyond fixing roads, sewers, and planning new developments. Today we have no limits what our city will do. The city opens businesses, is tasked with creating our culture, and even plans to build, manage, and lease subsidized apartments. Many functions traditionally performed by business, charity, and local groups are now performed by our city government. The problem for residents is that we have no control over the risks the city takes with our money, and when the city gets into business and charity, the average resident pays for it, whether he consumes the service or not. A city only has one way to collect its property taxes, and actually Andy alluded to this earlier. It's through property taxes. And so these property taxes are in no way linked to income. So when there's a government program that comes out, the middle class, the poor, and the rich pay basically the same amount for this new government program. So we end up with situations where you have a senior living on Aish who's paying for a doctor to go play squash at Service Place. You have a situation where people are paying to build an RV park who can't afford to buy RVs. You know, these are important services that our city does need, but surely these things can be provided by business, charities, and other groups in which the end user pays for the service instead of all the taxpayers. The way we are spending money at City Council right now certainly isn't fair, and it's certainly not equitable to everybody that lives in this town. In fact, the excessive rate of taxation is now affecting the very social fabric of St.Albert. St.Albert always was a balanced community comprised of people of all walks of life and ages. Today, development fees and property taxes are so high that young families won't move here, and seniors can't afford to stay. This affects the demographics of our city so much that the only feasible development here is for upper-end homes. We see this with the recent GenStar canceling their affordable housing development in Northbridge. There's no longer a market in St. Albert for starter homes because a young family can't afford the extra taxes and can't qualify for a mortgage when 1 or 2 annual mortgage payments is eaten up by City Hall. The problem with our existing City Council is nicely characterized by a person I've read quite a bit about, Ernest Benn, a famous British publisher. He said, "Politics is the art of looking for trouble, finding it whether it exists or not, diagnosing it incorrectly, and applying the wrong remedy." Let me explain. City Council has identified the problem. St. Albert has become unaffordable. However, their diagnosis is incorrect. We don't need government housing schemes to try and solve the problem. We need the government to reduce taxes so this town is affordable for all of us to live here. We're told that we need to increase density and build on parks and green space because City Hall needs the tax money. City Hall doesn't need any more money. They need to use the money we've given them already more wisely. We need a balanced community where business can find employees, seniors who volunteer, and parents can afford the costs of raising their children. We need a St. Albert for all generations and all classes of people. Now here's a smart direction we can go. Let's find some efficiencies in government and stem the growth of our property taxes so we are competitive with the other municipalities around us. Let's enact